Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are moving into the final discussion of the morning. But before we do that, let's look at creativity in action, where tradition meets heart in one of Vietnam's most iconic seasons. Let's watch our first Murray Spotlight, Coca-Cola Tết. Let the food speak for your heart by the Coca-Cola Company and Essence Medicom Vietnam.
Remember Nam and his mother's small street food joint near Batexco, which, like thousands of others, became an instant hit thanks to Coca-Cola's culture-defining platform Coca-Cola Food Marks. And now it got bigger, better, more magical. If last year's Coca-Cola Food Marks was fire, things got even more fiery, deepening a bond between consumers and retailers through more meaningful connections, at the heart of which was the celebration of Vietnam's 4 favorite iconic dishes through an iconic food race. End Step 1, Coca-Cola reimagined the Food Marks Hub, redesigned to feature the dishes with different retailers grouped and nominated under each theme. Audience logged in, rated their favorite outlets, and got grab coupons to order. The hub also featured a search engine which based on consumers' mood, connection type, and occasion to suggest the best-rated restaurant. In Step 2, the brand promoted the campaign with integrated partnerships. Coca-Cola collaborated with Channel Ken 14 on 4 long-form episodes, hosted by KOL Tina Thao T and 4 food reviewers. The show highlighted 14 local gems, generating 9.2 million views across platforms. While 4 prominent KOLs started the movement of the food race, followed by other micro-creators via the TikTok challenge number Quoc Dua Quan Din, they inspired the introduction of Food Marks Creator Hub, the first ever pay-per-performance model, which enabled regular audience to make Food Marks TikTok content to promote outlets and gain money on total engagement and view. Nearly 300 creators took part, each telling their own iconic stories, and garnered 90 million views. This was celebrated further with an offline Food Marks Creator Summit. Using Meta geo-targeted ads enabled by Silver Push Live Sync, Food Marks promoted 300 outlets across 4 meal themes, driving 1.4 million traffic to the hub, collecting 51,000 first-party data, and driving instant transaction with grab coupons. Coca-Cola took over the grab every week for each iconic dishes with customized ordering experiences through dedicated landing pages, deals, sampling, and in-platform ads, and saw a massive increase in Coca-Cola combo sales. On to Step 3. Based on audience vote, outlets were given fame and recognition every week, online and offline, generating FOMO for audience to engage further with the best-rated outlets given special year-end recognition. Coca-Cola Food Marks evolved, delivering bigger results, better association, and magical brand love. Food Marks continues to be a true celebration of meal culture and connections across every delicious bite and every sip of Coca-Cola.
All right, and as we are approaching our final morning session, we turn to the ultimate engine of growth, the community. In an era of fragmented attention, the strongest brands no longer starts with a message, they start with the people. And to reveal how to build creative that earns organic traction before a single dollar was spent on media, please welcome our final powerhouse panelist and our moderator, Mr. Tanjiru Asan, Head of Strategy of WPP Media, and to our panelists, Mr. Tấn Lê, Senior Marketing Director of Indochina, the Coca-Cola Company, Mr. Bùi Ngọc Anh, Founder and CEO of Cintiq, Mr. BJ Galinato, Executive Creative Director of Ogilvy and Mather Vietnam, Mr. Hugh Gilden, Chief Strategy Officer, Publicis Group. Please welcome to the stage.
All right, the last session. I'm actually really happy to see a lot of people still in the room and not running for lunch. So please stay with us for 30, 40 minutes, before you move into the lunch and all. Bittersweet moment for me. I will take 1 second, personally, because this would be probably my last, appearance in the stage with MMA. I have done, and I have to thank MMA for all the supports and all. Moving away from the country, moving out of it. So, yeah, thank you, MMA, for all the inspiration that it's given for such a long time. I have a heavyweight panelist today, as you can see, and it's a very interesting panel that we have. We are talking about community first approach. We are talking about getting attention where attention is very hard to get, right? Like, it's a world where TikTok is the #1 social channel now, right? Like, people are in it, but they can move away from a content very easily as well because it's a swipe, right? And attention, like more and more data is coming in that attention is dwindling so much. Like, it's like a 0.2 seconds, 0.3 seconds, somebody says 0.8 seconds. So sometimes when we say the challenge, like, okay, attention is dwindling and all, the question then becomes, are we doing enough as brands and advertisers to get the attention? Or are we sticking to our old principles and thinking that the same principle are going to work in a world which is changing? So we have to adapt, we have to change. So that's something that we're going to talk about a lot today. We're going to talk about the community aspect of how that can answer that question. So I'm going to start with Mr. Tin, the Senior Marketing Director, Indochina. And he has been, I mean, because I've worked with him also on that, he has been a big advocate of social first thinking. He has been a big advocate of community first thinking from a brand which is considered to be a global giant mass brand, which was very big in traditional channels before. So how do you see this journey evolving? How do you see Coke as a global brand evolving into this space? And I would also want to know, like, what you see as challenges in the market for others not to be completely able to go into such a community first, attention first kind of thinking.
Thanks, DJ. Thanks, MMA team, for this opportunity. I find it a bit funny to have this conversation with you here, DJ, because we have this conversation every single meeting behind the meeting rooms, behind the doors. So I think the social first approach is something that we don't have the roadmap for. Let me start with that. Everyone has an idea about it. What is the playbook? We don't know. So I think we are in the point of building that ourselves and experimenting things. But I think, having said that, the job for marketing, the communication job has not changed. It's like we need to get people attention, we need to get people engaged, and we need to allow people to take action. That's it. But the reason why we've been talking a lot about social first these days is we moved from the time like 10 years ago where social is basically a channel to extend the reach to the consumers, until today where social is everything. People use social to search for products, to engage, and people demand for authenticity. People demand that, we need to know and they need to trust us. So that's why, social first to me is very important. And one thing that we have been discussing a lot behind meeting rooms is when we see a social content and it smelled like brand, we were joking that it's very disgusting. Having social content and it smell like brand, who's gonna push that? Who's gonna watch that? And then we end up using media money to drive something that people don't engage with to begin with. But then from the marketing perspective, from the communicator's perspective, then if we open the floor for creativity, for content creators to say and do whatever they want to say and do we end up entertaining for the platforms rather than talking about what we need to talk about? So that's the dilemma that we need to balance all the times. At the Coca-Cola company, we have the principle which is own but open. Basically, how do we stay open to reflect the creative freedom of the content creators, the algorithms of different platforms, and the need of the consumer for different platforms and different occasions? But at the same time, how do we engineer the journey so well that we own the narrative, that people will see 10 or 20 different contents at the same time, but they gotta get the idea. So I think that that's something that we've been working on together with TJ and OGV team along the way.
Just to add to that question, like, so that's one thing is from the creator economy aspect, but there are campaigns where probably a lot of brands are now starting with thinking what a community shared value is and tapping into that. And sometimes you have to give that leeway to that community shared value and get your brand into it rather than your brand standing out there. It's like seamlessly integrating your brand into that. So, like, for your, like for a mass brand and like, it's like a massive, like Coca-Cola, like a global giant brand, what are the challenges in that kind of a space?
It's like I think the biggest challenge that we have to remind ourselves all the times is, are we entertaining the consumer just for the sake of entertaining? Because for a brand to be big, it needs to represent the values that people uphold. So sticking to the value of the brands and saying the right thing, having the dignity of saying the right thing to inspire the communities and be cool at the same time. So I think that's the biggest challenge. That is, to me, this is the biggest challenge. Like Coke is about happiness. Coke is about connecting people. But how do you translate that happiness and connecting people in a social way, in the way that talk to people, in the way that, we don't smell like a brand. We don't just entertain for nothing. So basically, to me, that's the most important thing that we need to crack all the times.
I think that creates a very interesting window, because what you're saying is that the brand probably also has to choose the right community to go and talk to. It has to connect to that, like, the brand essence has to be there with the community shared value. So I'll move to Mr. Hugh to talk about some of these examples, because he was sharing some of those great examples on the, like, in the backstage kind of how brands can actually choose right communities and the right tension to drive good conversation. And sometimes it can also go wrong. So I would have him share that.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. So I'm obviously the newest guy here, so most of my insights will be from other markets. So I hope those are helpful and useful. One of the communities that we did some really interesting work with was the trans community in India. So the client was Starbucks, and their strategy was around, in an increasingly polarized Indian nation, they wanted to be an accessible place for every Indian. So that was the community that we felt we wanted to support and activate. The work did all the things you wanted it to. We got on the news, it drove conversation, it had tension. But the number one learning, and this is so important for any community activation, is we centered that community. They were the first people we spoke to. We said, what do you care about? What are you stressed about? What are your pressures? We made sure that the crew that shot and created the work was LGBTQ friendly. So we made sure that we were in contact with community leaders. And the result was we got wonderfully positive responses. We got direct emails from people in the community saying how this had changed their world. And it was really powerful. But it worked because we didn't hijack their values. We asked them what they were, and then we responded and used our power as a brand to help them, not our power as a brand to sort of co-opt their struggles. So my big learning for any marginalized community activation, which happens a lot with purpose-based brands, is you must first center them, or it can backfire.
Yep. Bad example. We want one.
I have to check around the room, sorry. No, I mean, there are times it's gone wrong. I worked with a client, and they also were wanting to work with members of the gay community, and they were trying to encourage gay people to come out. Now, this is not acceptable. A gay person comes out when they want to on their schedule. It's not fair, it's not right. So the community pushed back on that brand very, very hard and said this isn't fair. And in many of the markets around the region, coming out as LGBTQ can be dangerous. It can cause problems with the family. So that sort of approach came across as really disrespectful and had centered the brand on what the brand wanted, not the values of the community. So I won't name and shame because we don't do that. But it is, again, it's a very simple, bright line between did you start with yourself or did you start with the community and what they care about? And that's super important.
I think that also leads to this big tension in the room that in Vietnam, what we see is that when you go into a community, you want to mold the community to say what you want to say only. And you don't look into their tension point. And that has led to a lot of very safe creativity, like, that we have had practice in the last 4 or 5 years. In effect, everything looks same. Sometimes, if you actually put a lot of advertising together, they do look same, or even social activations together, they do look same. So, is there a problem, like, is there a problem with the comfort of trying to go into that tension? Is that a problem, or is that something that we are willing to do from an agency aspect, but then brands are not accepting it? So I would have Vijay add a bit of more light on that one.
I think it's in terms of from where we come from. I think it's trying to create something meaningful and something that resonates with the audience in terms of the storytelling. Storytelling needs to mean something to that particular community for it to gain attention. I guess that's how we tackle this issue.
All right. So, and exactly right. Like, if you don't have that meaningfulness, and also sometimes we see, like, a lot of brands are going through the same problem, that the awareness to consideration, like, that whole middle funnel is leaking. People are aware of your brands, but they are not considering your brands because there is no meaningful connection that you are growing. And one of the ways to create that meaningful connection could be to get into more meaningful storytelling, which can come through commerce. Speaking of which, somebody created a great business out of only social. So, Mr. An, I would want to talk. I would want you to talk about your business, how you use social to drive that business from bottom to, like, to this growing, like, number that you have shared. And you can also have some implication of what from such boutique, like, brands which are going into such community first, social first approach. What is the learning for the market, like, to take?
Good morning. So I stepped back a little bit 10 years ago. So I left, I used to run Enderman in Vietnam, and I left the industry. At that time, I just thought a lot about if I want to build brand, how could I do? Because, of course, if I go into building a new brand, then I'm in a challenge for a company, especially startup or small company that we have no money, we have no budget to spend. But I was lucky because exactly because of the time that I run Enderman, I saw the clear chance that brand need to move into social media. Social commerce is something would be big. E-commerce would be big in Vietnam. And I saw that the best way and the thought process was there is, how could I leverage the community? Because the community is something that could be able to help us to scale later. So that was a thought process. And then now we have a Skinetic with a company with operating two brands. One is a Murat brand, is a distribution company, brand, and the other one is Candid. In less than 4 years, we were able to scale up Candid from $0 to $20 million. So basically, I co-created this company with the number one KOL in Vietnam. So basically, she owned the community that she has built for a lot of years, and I talked to her that we need to build a company where we have to base on authenticity and trust, because we have no advantage in terms of scaling through media spending or advertising in the beginning. So that is the whole model. So basically, our company is a digital first beauty company, social community first, and then use the social media to validate everything. So while we validate, the products that we want to sell, how that relevant is the community. The second thing is about, the messaging. How do you want to communicate to that community? The third one is about price positioning because it's also very important. We try to understand a lot from the community. And then from then, we will see what was the traction from the community. And then we scale up through, media. And then we move into Facebook, TikTok, and Shopee. So that is a whole journey of how we build the brand. But community create a lot of value for us because we see the relevancy. Eventually, if you want to tell a story, it needs to be relevant. And the first thing you need to know exactly who are you selling to. That's the first question, who is your customer? What they expect from the brand? What are the story you want to hear? What kind of product they want to use? So these are community can help a lot. So that make a lot of community equity compounds for us. That help a lot. Without the community, we are not able to fast scaling the business. And without community, we cannot build the business in less than 4 years with $20 million.
Yeah.
That's how I make it.
Yeah, thank you. I think that there's a very interesting learning there that you're using community to start the campaign, and it also works as a back-end research. How are people reacting to your products? How are people giving feedback to your products? How are people liking or not, or the campaign itself? And that can actually allow you to, when you scale up, to use those learnings further. So, Antin, you want to add anything to that one?
I'm very happy to hear that. At Coke, we do that a lot, to be honest. Like, for example, I remember one Lunar New Year campaign where Sprite, basically, we tried to solve the heated moments. And we were like, what are the heated moments that consumers might face during Lunar New Year? Normally, when big brands ask that kind of questions, we go to research. But research today, to me, is like, the consumer offline and online, they have so many characteristics and personalities online. So one person can have so many identities. So how do we stay up with that? So we went to communities, we throw the questions to the administrators of different communities that we want to go in. And within 24 hours, we get like thousands of responses back. And we validate real time with the consumers, and we follow with, okay, if that's your attention, if we say this, what do you think? So I think that's the most authentic way that we got from the communities. Yeah.
I love that. I just noticed it says creative that earns attention first, and I think the word earn is really important.
Yes.
The value of a paid media dollar has consistently declined through my 25-year career. It used to be quite easy. And as a result, earned conversations are critical to your brand. But that means you've got less control over it. And that requires a mindset shift from us as agency people and brand marketers, because you're not going to be able to get a fully polished through the funnel campaign with all your boxes checked and then launch on day one. You'll have to be reactive and adjust as knowledge comes in. But as things change, and if you're flexible, you can actually create a campaign that lives and breathes organically in an earned media environment, which will in the end be much more powerful and hopefully a bit more efficient than a giant paid media buy, because it's harder and harder and harder to buy salience every single year.
I totally agree with you. I think the key word here is the earn, because we're not going to buy the market. We have to grow through earning the market. That's how I think.
Yeah, I think in that earned space also, right? I think sometimes what we used to do traditionally is we think of one big idea and we polish it and then we go through the funnel. We still do it. It's not like we don't do it. But there's more and more emphasis on becoming more moment specific. Even in a, say, a TED campaign, right? A TED campaign runs for 8 weeks to 10 weeks, kind of like, we have a 10 weeks period. So the emotions around those 10 weeks is not consistent and linear. It is changing every time, right? Before, people are preparing for the TED or they're buying the tickets, then only they're going to their hometown and all. And then there are different communities which actually resonate to these different moments, kind of. So I think one thing that we miss is and what we have to adopt, I think, in the market, we have to be more moment specific and more relevance towards those moments. And that's only when earn will happen, because otherwise we're force fitting the narrative and that just doesn't work out. we'll move into a different topic connected to this. Um, Certainly not these clients, they're very good clients, but I'm saying for the market at large. Sometimes when we think about social first, people think I can cut budget. Why? Because I'm going to go in social. I don't need much budget. I don't need much production and all that. So, oh, community, it can be one or two posts here and there. Are you facing that challenge? How do we cater to that? Because we still have to run a business, right?
I mean, coming as a creative, right, art-based creative. So, there's that term of high production value creative, and I think nowadays, personally, I think it should our mindset should shift from a high production value kind of a creative into something of a high relevance value kind of a creative. Yeah, high level of meaning kind of creative. So it's not just about the polish. It's not just about the gloss of how your production or your ad or your film is, but how it provides meaning, how it resonates with your target audience. I think that's an art, and that's a skill that us creatives need to develop. And I think there's a lot of hybrid creatives out there who are the young ones who are really talented in this social first kind of a creative mindset. But it's still a skill that you need to improve and hone as the market changes. So yeah, I think it's definitely it's a challenge, but it's in terms of creating meaning and relatability to the audience, and creating stories that relate to the audience to that reflects your product as well. So that's something that we are constantly
Yeah.
doing.
Just to add to that, and it's to everybody. Should that be institutionalized somehow? Should that kind of learning? Because as we say, it's like, okay, we need to create high relevance content, but then that can mean anything, right? I mean, people can interpret in different ways, which is fair. But should there be like a concentrated effort from the industry at large, and where MMA, of course, can take a leading role also, to really get people in a room, get creatives in room, talk about these high relevance creatives that you're talking about, and how to make them, how to shift this narrative. Do you see a need in the market, for a more institutionalized study around this matter?
I think in the course of creating those types of campaigns, I think you go by what the audience wants. So institutionalizing it, I guess in the brainstorming sessions, yeah, I think it's something that we must apply. So being social first, I think it's something what the market is into and what the market needs right now.
Anything you want to add, Antin, on this?
Disclaimer, I never cut budget. We just spend it in a different way, basically. And I think for this one thing in our meeting rooms, one thing we always challenge ourselves is when we have an idea, when we think about social first, that earn attention, we think like sometimes it's a matter of luck whether the campaign or the idea will get picked up by communities. Our challenge behind the doors has always been like, how can we make it predictable rather than a matter of luck? Because like when it comes to social first, it's not about, like I said at the beginning, it's not an extended tool to reach to people, but now it's the center of everything. We need to engineer the journey. We need to engineer the journey. The good news is human insights are the same. Human motivations are the same. Just the way they express is different. So we need to engineer from how that we get the insight from the consumers. It has to be a systematic way to get the insights from the consumers, the algorithm from the platforms, the brand values, and how do we connect all this? How do we engineer? How do we make viral predictable rather than a matter of luck? The second point I want to say is the integration. In this integration, like the most important person in the room for a campaign to start is actually planner. But planners today is like planners from awareness all the way to transactions. So there's an end-to-end kind of planning. And in that process, when the engineer and integration happens, then we can produce content at scale, and we can basically talk about what we want to talk about rather than producing pollution rather than, content and solving people's problem. So I think another part about integration is like, now I know that some big KOLs, they have their own production team. They don't rely on the agency. They do it themselves. But how creative team can help and work and guide or inspire them. We don't want to lose their authenticity, but at the same time, we don't want them to, go off the record, off the radar to say something that's so risky to the brand. So I think that is another point that I think I would love to look into in the next, when the creative integrate deeply into the planning and then the social communities.
Correct. So it's more of not just guidance, but holding the ground from a creative aspect. Let the authenticity flow, but you still need to guardrail against it from a brand aspect. And that's where probably the modern day creative needs to start thinking through.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with this. Integration has been my thing for more than 10 years now. And if we leave aside the paid budget versus social budget media, the complexity of running these campaigns for clients and agencies is much higher. You need much more people. They have wildly different skill sets. They often disagree. So your team is going to be bigger and more diverse than it was in the, quote, old way of doing it. And in my experience across three big agencies, you're absolutely right. And it doesn't have to be someone with strategist in the title. It can be anyone. But if you don't have a strategic thread that runs from business problem to creative idea to executions through that community to measurement, that is the difference between whether it works or not. I would say 90% of the time. Really, really important. So I love that.
And I think engineering is the word that I really like it, because I think before I think a little bit struggling to actually do it, but right now we have a lot of tool and methodology to actually measure the what work and what doesn't work. Because in our company right now, with the data that we build, the data platform, we can see immediately what work and what doesn't work, and what kind of content that work and creativity that work. Even we can measure quickly, consumer can see, in how many seconds that they would click through it. So basically, from then, with the data that we have in our hand, we're able to create a platform, or we can engineering, the creative that we think that would be able to scale further, especially for integration purpose.
We are short of time, 3 minutes. I saw that. We get 2-3 minutes more, maybe. Okay. So just one more point, which is we get the community first, right? But as traditional advertisers, sometimes, or big advertisers like Coke, big agencies here, we still have that knack of wanting to tell a bigger story. That beauty of storytelling, like the best TVCs that we used to have. And that gone missing in the market, right? Last 4 or 5 years, as we say, it's just not, it's a lot of thought leadership which is driven by executions, communities and all, but that big piece storytelling is not there. How do we keep it? And how do we nurture it to the futuristic model? Any thoughts around that? Anybody can jump in on this one. You jump in first.
I think as we talk social, you're absolutely right. What we have been missing is a really, really good creative. Because now things get very fragmented. There's no big work out there, but we really need it. If you, I don't know if we show the clip today in the forum, but if you see the new TVC for Coca-Cola for FIFA World Cup, it's how about turning the intrinsic values of the drink, mapping with the extrinsic value of the consumers, and telling the emotions through the cans. So I think that kind of bigness in creativity that has been missing, and even for ourselves, we've been missing that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we all wrestle with. I've been lucky enough to be part of some huge film productions, and it's great fun. I think it's important to remember that a big production is different from a great idea. And I know it's a cliche, and you knew I was going to say it, but it has to start with an idea. Just because it's earned, just because it's community first, that doesn't change the one essential truth, which is big ideas are what get anyone to pay attention. So we must remain laser focused on that, I think, because without that, you'll just be stuck in tactical land and platform expertise. You've got to drag yourself out of that day to day and ask yourself, is the idea big enough, bold enough, and brave enough to really earn people's attention?
So I probably have to sum it up here because our times is up. So we talked about a lot about community as well as we now touch upon those big storytelling and all. But I think we cannot say it enough, but idea still comes first. If you don't have a great idea, nothing will work. So the idea defines which community you go to. The idea defines what story you tell with those communities. The idea would define you to push the boundaries a bit more rather than being safe. So this is very important. And secondary, it's how we have to let the community have their shared value. We cannot completely destroy that. So you don't go as a brand and tell what they need to say, but you still have to maintain your essence and not let it stray away, stray away from where you are. So that's very important. And it probably entails to look from an agency side also for us to look into our teams more, to see whether our teams are diversified enough to cater to this world, rather than being like single-minded and just doing creative stuff and are doing planning stuff. They have to sit in the same room. They have to talk the same language. If they don't speak the same language, we will be in a problem of fragmentation. Thank you. Thank you, Antin. Thank you, Mr. Hugh. Thank you, Mr. An. Thank you, my friend BJ. And thanks to MMA for the time. We conclude the session here. Thank you.
Thank you to our moderator, and thank you so much to our panelists. Please step one step forward so we can present you with our appreciation token. Ladies and gentlemen, a bigger round of applause for our moderator and for our panelists this morning. Thank you. Thank you to Ms. Jessica. Thank you so much, and come back to your seats, please. And ladies and gentlemen, before you leave, may we just ask this one little favor of you. So can you please whip out your phone and scan this QR code right on the screen, and we would really appreciate your feedback so that we can make the next MMA events even better for you. So please, at this point, I am begging you, you need to do this for us because we would really much appreciate your feedback, because we want you to, every time you come to MMA events, you will have a wonderful experience with us here today. And now we're going to spend at least 3 minutes for everybody to complete our survey. It's only 5 questions, 5 short questions, and then we will send you on your way. Once again, on behalf of MMA Vietnam, thank you so much. And before that, please take 3 minutes to scan the QR code and to complete the survey of just 5 questions, ladies and gentlemen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, and that concludes our MMA Creative Submit Vietnam 2026. On behalf of MMA Vietnam, thank you to our speakers, to our leaders, and to all of our delegates for coming here today. We appreciate you, and please travel safe, stay creative, and we will see you again at MMA Creative Innovative event in 10 to 11 of June. Once again, thank you. And this is Kim. I'm signing off.